Good evening and welcome to Child Welfare Practice News. Today's topic is foster care, where we will discuss topics such as history, why foster care is important, demographics of the issue, long term care, funding, and programs. First, let's hear from Christine on the history and why foster care is important. Christine?
Foster care, also known as out of home care, is full time care outside of the child's original home. Foster care is intended to be a temporary home away from home while the agency works with the child's family to eliminate or minimize safety issues. These issues may have been the cause of the agency involvement. While children are in care, the focus is on helping parents to improve their life situations so that children can be returned to them safely. Foster care may be given within a relative's home, a non-related family foster home, a treatment foster home, a small group home, a cottage setting, a large residential care facility, or if the child is old enough, in his or her own residence with independent living program supervision. The children in most need of homes are children with special needs, including teenagers, siblings, and children with physical, emotional, or behavioral disabilities. The goal is to return the children safely back to their parents. But if that fails, the expectation is to have the children be placed with family or placed for adoption or be discharged from care on reaching legal maturity. In 1562, children were being hired through indentured services. This system started in England and was a way to provide housing for homeless children. Under this system, children were bidded out to a master artisan. In order to live with their masters, the children were taught a craft or trade. These children were obligated to give their masters obedience and labor, which paid for their keep and training until they reached maturity. The indentured system led to the development of family foster care in the United States and is also considered the beginning of placing children into homes. Outdoor relief was another form of fostering children, but it was looked down upon mainly because these children actually had parents. They were just extremely poor. This system received so much scrutiny that Yates in 1842 recommended the elimination of the system. The outdoor relief system was replaced with maintaining a poorhouse in every county. These poorhouses would soon be known as almshouses. Almhouses were built in large towns to house needy children. At first, many believed that the almhouses would be beneficial to the children in need, but living in these homes was a harsh reality compared to those children that were under the indentured service system. These children lived under poor conditions that included not being educated, meaning they weren't taught a craft or a trade, and lack of nutritious food. These houses were given the title of worst possible nursery and most disgraceful memorial of public charity. In the 19th century, public and private institutions started to form because of the backlash that the indentured, outdoor relief, and the almshouses were receiving. Under these new agencies, institutions for the blind, deaf, mentally deficient, delinquent, and orphanages were set in place. These new institutions hope to protect all children from abuse and neglect. Though the founders of the institutions believed they were doing the children justice, many children died under their care, mainly because the larger institutions had problems with inadequate sanitation, medical care, proper food, and diseases. With consistent disappointment of public and private efforts to foster dependent children, orphanages grew in large numbers until the free fostering home movement started. Charles Brace in 1853 took an interest in how the children were being mistreated, and he started taking needy or homeless children to rural areas to live on farms. The movement was known as the Orphan Train. Between 1853 through 1929, over 30,000 children were placed in family homes based on the Orphan Train movement. Over the years, as the movement continued, more people started to ask themselves, what does the child really need? The White House Conference on Children in 1909 stated that all children need families and that family care was the preferred environment to meet the needs of developing children. Responsibility for children's daily care usually is transferred from the biological parents because of a serious situation. These serious situations can include neglect, abuse, homelessness, alcohol or drug abuse, death, sexual abuse, truancy, abandonment, incarceration, and medical neglect. There is no single reason why children are put in foster care. The situation varies from child to child. It is said that a primary reason they are placed in care is because family breakdown or incapability heightened by severe environmental pressures. These breakdowns are the result of children being placed in care.
Thank you, Christine. Now let's talk about some of the demographics of the issue of foster care. When it comes to placement settings for children in foster care, majority of them are placed in the family homes of non-relative foster families. Next, 23% of these children are placed in the homes of relative foster families. 10% are placed in institutions, 9% placed in group homes, and 5% are placed in pre-adoptive homes. These statistics took place and were measured in 2013. When it comes to the length of time these children are staying in foster care, 32% of them are staying anywhere from 1 month to 11 months. 20% of them are staying anywhere from 1 to 2 years in their placements. As far as race and ethnicity goes, majority of the children in foster care are white, 39% to be exact. At 35%, we have black children, and we have Hispanic children at 17% of the foster care population in the year 2013. Next, we'll hear from Kendra. Kendra?
Now let's talk about long-term foster care and how it affects children. Unfortunately, children staying in foster care for longer periods of time have increased over the past few years. Just in 2013, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services found that nearly 1 in 5 children in the foster care system have been placed there for 3 or more years. Also, 45% of teens that age out of foster care spent more than 3 years in care. Many children experience long-term foster care because other permanency goals such as adoption, guardianship, permanent placement with a fit and willing relative cannot be pursued until reunification has been attempted. So children are forced to be with the foster family until their biological family has worked out their case plan, which sometimes take years depending on the case and circumstances. Studies show children who experience long-term foster care are more likely to experience mental health challenges than children in the general population. Although coming into care could seem like a relief to a person on the outside looking in, Munson and McMillan's 2010 article titled Tragedies of Depression Symptoms Among Older Youth Exiting Foster Care stated that the loss of biological parents, extended family, and familiar community as a result of out-of-home placement may also contribute to the elevated rate of depression in foster care. Children in foster care face a great deal of emotional trauma. Since the early 2000s, depression has been the most common diagnosed disorder to children in foster care. Munson and McMillan's 2010 article reported that children in foster care who are struggling with depression are also exposed to several other negative outcomes, such as underachievement, risky sexual behavior, and teenage pregnancy. While conducting research on teenage pregnancy and foster children, I found that females between 15 and 18 years old are more likely to engage in unprotected sex when compared to teen males in foster care. The existence of abuse and neglect negatively influence a child's sense of self-worth and ability to be loved. While in foster care long term, children are often moved from place to place, sometimes due to disruptions. With each new placement, self esteem may be further diminished as children may feel unwanted or rejected by a previous caregiver despite the reason for a new placement. Youth in foster care are also more prone to experiencing self esteem issues, stigmatization, strain on personal relationships, and delay in independence, according to Stott's 2012 journal titled Placement, Instability, and Risky Behaviors of Youth Aging Out of Foster Care. Aging out of care is becoming a common way for children to exit out of care. If an adolescent does not reunite with their biological family, they are more likely to age out of care or run away. As of 2013, 53% of children placed in a non-relative foster family home were waiting to be adopted. A study completed in 2014 found about 30,000 youth age out of foster care each year all throughout the United States. Youth who age out of foster care are expected to experience a great deal of adversity. Anywhere from 14 to 30% of youth who age out of care is expected to experience homelessness within the first 3 years of emancipation. Majority do not graduate from high school, which causes hardship in other areas such as emotional, financial, and housing security.
Thanks for sharing, Kendra. Now we'll hear from Vanessa on the funding and the programs of foster care.
The Social Security Act contains the primary sources of federal funds available to states for child welfare, foster care, and adoption activities. These funds include both non-entitlement authorizations for which the amount of funding available is determined through the annual appropriations process, and authorized entitlements under which the federal government has a binding obligation to make payments to any person or unit of government that meets the eligibility criteria established by law. The federal government provides funds to states to administer child welfare programs. While the federal government controls foster care operations, it's the nonprofit state licensed organizations that receive the funding. State grant programs have their own matching requirements and allocations, and all require that funds go to and be administered by state child welfare agencies, or in some programs, Indian tribes or tribal organizations. In most states, foster children are eligible for Medicaid cards, which cover medical, dental, and counseling services. Foster children have the same minimum health benefits as children in the Aid to Families with Department of Children program. Most federal funds for AFDC and foster children's health care come through federal Medicaid. Foster parents receive reimbursements for child's food and clothing. Some states provide a clothing voucher at the time of the child's first placement. Others provide clothing vouchers at the beginning of each school year. Foster parents may also receive subsidized payment by the state on a monthly basis. The amount is usually based on the number of children being fostered in one home and child medical needs and age. Along with food and clothing, foster parents can use the payment for extracurricular activities, transportation, and personal products for the foster child. The United States spent almost $26 billion on child welfare services in the federal fiscal year in 2006, the last year for which detailed information is available. The federal government provided over $12 billion state governments almost $11 billion, and local governments almost $3 billion. This money comes from numerous programs. At least 43 separate federal funding streams can be used to pay for the child welfare services. In the United States, foster youth services programs provide support services to foster children who suffer the traumatic effects of displacement from family and schools and multiple placements in foster care. Foster youth services have the ability of authority to ensure that health and school records are obtained to establish appropriate placements and coordinate instruction, counseling, tutoring, mentoring, vocational training, emancipation services, training for independent living, and other related services. FYS programs increase the stability of placements for foster care children and youth. These services are designed to improve the children's educational performance and personal achievement, directly benefiting them as well as providing long-range cost savings to the states. A few examples of programs for children in foster care are the Independent Living Program, which allows some foster youth, 17 or older, to learn self-sufficiency skills while living in an apartment in the community and being supervised by the youth's caseworker and a care provider. In ILP, you can learn valuable skills that you will need when you get emancipated from foster care. Another example is children in foster care get money for school. They are eligible for free money for college. Foster youth can receive financial aid that can help pay for tuition as well as many living expenses such as rent and transportation. Health insurance until the age of 21 is another program set for foster care youth. Foster care youth who are emancipated from foster care on their 18th birthday can have Medicaid insurance until they turn 21, regardless of how much money they have or whether they are working or not.
Thank you, Vanessa. This just in, Kendra has just landed an exclusive interview from a teen in foster care. Let's hear from them. Kendra?
To understand a little bit better about the foster care topic as a whole, I thought it would be good to interview a child that is currently in foster care and is experiencing foster care. Thankfully, I intern at Benchmark Family Services, so I was able to speak to someone that is comfortable with me, and I'm also comfortable with them to just kind of hear their side of everything. I was able to speak to a 16-year-old African-American male who is placed in a foster home under Benchmark Family Services. He has been in foster care since the age of 12, so going on about 4 years now. But he has been living in a Benchmark Family Services foster home for about 2 years now. His current permanency goal is adoption. Of course, I can't put the whole interview in this clip, but I will go ahead and summarize some of the important things that we talked about during our interview. The client reported that he's a little frustrated because at this point he doesn't really know what's going on as far as his permanency plan, which kind of made me think of his defects worker obviously dropped the ball in that area. But he did explain that he once had a pre-adoptive family up until the end of 2014, and something happened. He communicated that he's not sure what happened, but something happened to where he just stopped hearing from them. He would do overnight visits during the holiday, and all of a sudden it just kind of disappeared. And that made me feel sad for him because, while talking to him, I learned that he came into care due to his mother's addiction to alcohol. He has not been made aware of who his biological father is, so he kind of grew up absent father in one of those situations. And his maternal grandmother has expressed that she doesn't want to take custody of him, and he also says that he's afraid of her. So the client has experienced a great deal of rejection, and so I think that with the pre-adoptive family just kind of giving up, kind of added on to maybe some of his trauma of feeling rejected, and maybe him asking himself why didn't they choose him? And I asked him how did he feel about it, and he just kind of expressed that it is what it is, kind of a nonchalant attitude. But I was able to pick up that was just a really good defense mechanism without addressing the situation. Then he didn't really have to express how he felt about it. A very important fact is that the client is okay with his foster mom. He says that she's good to him, she's loving and supportive to him. And I've also had the pleasure of seeing the foster mom and the client interact. And I think they have a very good therapeutic, supportive relationship. She's also able to provide a very good nurturing placement for the client at this time. But however, prior to being with her, he was with the foster family back in Augusta, Georgia, which is his hometown. And unfortunately, one day walking to school, he crossed a busy highway and was hit by a bus. He was in a coma for 2 weeks, and they transferred him from Augusta to Atlanta. And of course, he couldn't go back to his foster family in Augusta, so he was placed at Benchmark Family Services with his current foster parent, which I think shows strength because he hasn't disrupted. He's been able to grow with her for the past 2 years, and so it is someone that he's comfortable with. However, he doesn't think that he'll be there until he's 18, so he's really adamant about going back to Augusta, or that's what he really wants to do. He don't want to just be here until he can age out. The client expressed that to clear his mind, he enjoys to rap. He says rapping is just a part of him and who he is. He says, I asked him what got him into rapping, and he said life, which I found as a strength as well. He was able to just write down some of his thoughts and feelings about different situations and circumstances that he's experienced. So I thought that could be good. On a not so good note, the client struggles with using illegal substance such as marijuana. He says that he's been using marijuana since the age of 14, which is a little alarming because he started using after he came into care. He reported a situation once where he was sent home because the school personnel assumed that he was high. He said his eyes was red, but he said that he was just tired, but they sent him home because he appeared to be high. He reported that he's really ready to start the workforce. He wants to work, but feels that he can't work due to his defects. Case manager not giving him the okay. He reported that also frustrates him because he's ready to start making his own money. And I also find that as a strength because it shows that he's ready to become responsible, but he's just not able to do so. He is currently in an ILP where he's learning vocational skills. He's working on resume prep and job prep. He also is working on money management, budgeting, and ways to save money. And the foster parent also allows him to do small chores such as taking out the trash and things like that. What I took away from the interview was that it is so important that the defects case manager give each client their best, regardless of how many people are on their caseload. Just because this particular client is able to feel that his DFACS case manager doesn't have enough time for him. On another note, what I took away from the interview is that it's really good when a child doesn't disrupt their placement if you can find the perfect fit. For example, obviously this foster parent has been a pretty good match for him and his particular needs at the time that he was placed, and he's been able to stay there, and by him being there, he's been able to get some sort of stability. A not so good thing is that I think that it would be important to make foster kids aware of how the chances are of them becoming homeless once they age out, because he doesn't really have a backup plan after he graduates. He just says he wants to become a rapper, and he doesn't see the importance of, at least a second option, whether even if it's not college, even if it's picking up a trade or finding a really good job or mastering a particular skill. I think it's important, and I think foster kids need to know about the importance of that, because once he graduates, if he decides, that, hey, I don't want to do anything but rapping without a backup plan, he could be really setting himself up for not so good outcomes. Thank you.
Thank you, Kendra. Let's remember it's important to stay up to date and current on the issues that affect our society. And for that, we thank you for watching. Have a good night.